More than 70 million military personnel mobilized, over 20 million dead, and another 21 million wounded. These staggering figures represent the catastrophic global event known as World War I. It was a colossal conflict, a clash of nations that spanned across the globe. It was a time when alliances were tested, old empires crumbled, and new powers emerged from the ashes. The Great War, as it was known then, saw the participation of over 30 countries, from the dusty plains of Africa to the frosty tundras of Russia. The world had never seen a war of such magnitude, such devastation, and such far-reaching consequences. The social, political, and economic fabric of societies was forever altered, setting the stage for a new world order. This was a war like no other, a war that changed the course of history forever. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria on June 28, 1914, set the stage for the cataclysm that was to follow. A single bullet fired by a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip in Sarajevo would echo across the globe, igniting the powder keg of tension that had been building in Europe. But let's rewind for a moment. The early 20th century was a time of significant political upheaval. The major European powers, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary, were locked in a delicate balance of power. Nationalism was on the rise, and territorial disputes were common. The world was a complex web of alliances, treaties, and mutual defense pacts, creating a precarious situation where a minor conflict could easily escalate into a full-scale war. Now, back to that fateful day in Sarajevo. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was the spark that lit the fuse. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, declared war on Serbia, who was allied with Russia. This set off a chain reaction as one by one nations were drawn into the conflict due to their commitments to defend their allies. Britain and France, bound by the Triple Entente with Russia, found themselves at war with the Central Powers of Germany and Austria-Hungary. Meanwhile, Italy, initially allied with Germany and Austria-Hungary in the Triple Alliance, switched sides to join the Allies, further complicating the situation. In the midst of all this, the world watched in disbelief as the complex web of alliances triggered a domino effect, pulling nation after nation into the fray. The intricate diplomatic ties that were meant to maintain peace had instead set the stage for a war of unprecedented scale. As tensions escalated, the world found itself on the brink of a devastating conflict. On July 28, 1914, the Austro-Hungarian Empire declared war on Serbia, marking the start of World War I. No sooner had the ink dried on the declaration than the first shots were fired. The early stages of the war saw a flurry of activity as countries prepared their forces. The Central Powers, led by Germany and Austria-Hungary, squared off against the Allies, a coalition that included the United Kingdom, France, and Russia. The stakes were high and the world held its breath. The opening battles were fierce, a brutal introduction to a new kind of warfare. As armies clashed on the Western and Eastern fronts, strategies were put to the test. The Schlieffen Plan, Germany's bold attempt to knock out France quickly, failed to achieve its swift victory. Instead, it led to a deadlock, with neither side gaining much ground. Modern technology played a significant role in shaping the war. Rapid-fire machine guns, poison gas, and heavily armored tanks transformed the battlefield. These were no longer wars of cavalry charges and bayonets, but of trenches and artillery. The sky, too, was a new frontier, with aircrafts used for reconnaissance and later aerial combat. New warfare tactics were also introduced. Trench warfare, a defensive strategy designed to protect against enemy fire, became a defining feature of the Western Front. The trenches were a grim testament to the harsh realities of war, with soldiers living in close quarters under constant threat of attack. Meanwhile, on the high seas, Germany's U-boat campaign threatened to strangle Britain's lifeline. The unrestricted submarine warfare led to significant losses, including civilian casualties, and drew more nations, including the United States, into the conflict. The early days of World War I were a time of rapid change and brutal conflict. Nations mobilized their forces, new technologies were used, and strategies were tested. The war was in full swing, and its impact was felt around the globe. From the trenches of the Western Front to the waters of the Atlantic, World War I was marked by several significant battles and turning points. In the heart of the conflict we find the Battle of the Somme. Taking place from July to November of 1916, this was one of the largest and bloodiest battles of the war. British and French forces were pitted against the German Empire with the goal of breaking the stalemate on the Western Front. Despite the devastating loss of life, the Battle of the Somme marked a turning point as it weakened the German army and laid the groundwork for future Allied victories. Next, we move to the Battle of Verdun, one of the longest and costliest battles in human history. From February to December 1916, the French and Germans engaged in a brutal contest of wills, with each side suffering enormous casualties. Verdun became a symbol of French determination and German tactical prowess, and its outcome had a profound impact on the morale and strategy of both sides. But the war was not only fought on the fields of Europe. The waters of the Atlantic were a crucial battleground, with German U-boats threatening Allied shipping. This naval warfare, particularly the sinking of the Lusitania, played a key role in bringing the United States into the fray in April 1917. The entry of the United States with its fresh troops and vast resources was a major turning point. It shifted the balance of power and provided a much-needed boost to the weary Allies. These pivotal moments, the Battle of the Somme, the Battle of Verdun, and the entry of the United States, were more than just chapters in a war story. They were turning points that shaped the course of the war and ultimately the future of the world. Each event, each decision, each sacrifice made in these battles had far-reaching consequences, forever altering the landscape of global politics and international relations. On November 11, 1918, the guns fell silent, marking the end of the Great War. It was a momentous day as the world drew a collective breath, weary from years of conflict. The armistice had been signed, a ceasefire agreement that halted the fighting on the Western Front and set the stage for peace negotiations. In a railway car in the forest of Compiègne, France, delegates from the Allied powers and Germany gathered to hammer out the terms of peace. The result was the Treaty of Versailles, a complex and controversial document that would leave a lasting impact on Europe and the world. Signed on June 28, 1919, the treaty sought to hold Germany accountable for the devastation of the war. It imposed heavy reparations on the country, crippling its economy. Germany lost significant territory and was forced to reduce its military drastically. The Rhineland was demilitarized and German colonies overseas were handed over to the Allies. Yet the treaty did more than redraw the map of Europe. It reshaped the geopolitical landscape. It led to the breakup of empires and the birth of new nations. It sowed the seeds of nationalism and discontent, elements that would eventually fuel the rise of dictatorships and ignite the flames of another world war. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. At the time, many hoped the Treaty of Versailles would ensure lasting peace. The League of Nations, the world's first international diplomatic group, was established as part of the treaty, a beacon of hope in a war-torn world. However, the peace achieved was fragile. The punitive measures imposed on Germany bred resentment. The treaty's terms were seen as a dictated peace by the Germans, who felt they had been unfairly treated. The stage was set for future conflict. The war was over, but its effects would reverberate for decades to come. The Treaty of Versailles, for better or worse, marked the end of one chapter in history and the beginning of another. Its legacy continues to shape our world today. World War I left a profound and enduring mark on the world. It was more than just a conflict. It was a global event that permanently altered the course of history. The war triggered seismic shifts in political and social landscapes, reshaping nations and cultures. Empires crumbled and new countries emerged from the ashes. Moreover, World War I was a catalyst for technological innovation. From advancements in weaponry to the advent of radio communication, the war spurred a technological revolution that would continue to evolve throughout the 20th century. But perhaps the most significant legacy of World War I was the groundwork it laid for another, even more devastating conflict. The conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, the political instability, and the economic crises it spurred all set the stage for World War II. World War I, a global catastrophe that reshaped the world, remains a stark reminder of the tragic cost of war. Today, we've journeyed through the pivotal moments of World War I, a war that forever changed the course of history. We've traced the spark that ignited the conflict, from the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand through to the battles that raged across the globe. We've witnessed the turning points that steered the course of the war, and the moment when peace finally descended with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. We've also explored the lasting impact of this war, how it redrew borders, reshaped politics, and left an indelible mark on generations to come. This war, as devastating as it was, served as a stark reminder of the cost of conflict and the value of peace. As we close this chapter, let's carry forward the lessons from this period of history. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. If you enjoyed this video and would like to learn more about other significant periods in history, do subscribe to our channel.